Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. I've got a sponsor this week, and it's a good one. You may even be entertained. Ditch the boring coffee mug for Father's Day this year and gift Dad with the Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit. You get 20% off plus free international shipping when you go to manscaped.com/jingles and use code JINGLES. That's 20% off plus free international shipping with promo code JINGLES at manscaped.com/jingles. A beard so magnificent it could deflect a 16-inch armor piercing shell doesn't just take care of itself, you know. And this, of course, is where Manscaped's Beard Hedger Pro Kit comes in, featuring the Beard Hedger itself, complete with power adapter and USB-C cable. A beard comb for ensuring that a civilized and distinguished gentleman always looks his best. One pot of beard balm for ensuring that the grooming process doesn't chafe. The finest beard conditioner that money can buy. A beard brush for smoothing out the toughest of tangles. Some beard oil for ensuring that the distinguished gentleman's beard doesn't dry out and crack. No kit would be complete without the beard shampoo. And finally, one sturdy pair of scissors for ensuring that anything that the hedge trimmer missed gets taken care of appropriately. So ditch that boring old coffee mug for Father's Day this year and give the distinguished gentleman in your house the gift of Manscaped. Get free international shipping plus 20% off when you go to manscaped.com/jingles and use promo code JINGLES. And you too can have the second most illustrious beard in the house. Yeah, I mean, my beard's alright, but, you know, when you're in the same house as Akazuki, you're just going to have to get used to being in second place. I mean, hers is absolutely magnificent. She is so pretty. Anyway, moving on swiftly. I wanted to give a shout out. This is a subject that recently at least has been very close to my heart. I got a message earlier this week from a gentleman who goes by the name of Johnny J. Appleseed. And he's partnered up with a South African cancer survivors charity. You can see why this one kind of resonated with me a bit. The charity goes by the name of the Childhood Cancer Foundation South Africa. And in order to bring attention to International Cancer Survivors Day, which is on the 1st of June, he and a couple of friends are going to be taking on a Project Zomboid challenge, streaming it on YouTube. The idea is they take as many negative traits as they possibly can and try to survive for as long as possible. Who's going to die first? Join them on YouTube and find out. Link down below in the video description. That's Johnny J. Appleseed doing a Project Zomboid challenge in support of the South African Childhood Cancer Foundation for International Cancer Survivors Day on the 1st of June. In other news, there's been an interesting legal precedent set as far as gaming is concerned. And it's from the developer Bungie, the makers of, well, amongst other things, Halo, Destiny, Destiny 2. They recently won a jury case against the cheat maker and were awarded, wait for it, $63,210 in damages. Now, $63,000 might be a life-changing amount of cash for you and me, but to Bungie, that's barely a rounding error. I mean, it's not even walking around money. I guarantee it probably cost them 4 times that amount just to take the cheat makers to court. But the point here isn't the amount of damages that have been awarded, it's the fact that they've set a legal precedent here. What made the case interesting, because this isn't the first time Bungie have taken cheat makers to court, but it's the first time that I'm aware of that the cheat makers have countersued Bungie, because in most cases, like Nintendo in particular, are notorious for this sort of thing. The case never gets to court because the cheat makers just fold under legal pressure. In the past, it's been true that most people making cheats for games, they can't afford to pay for legal representation in order to fight the case. And so they just cease and desist, which is usually fine, and all the gaming company is really intending to get out of it. But this time, not only did it go to court, but bear in mind, making cheats for games isn't illegal. You know, it's not against the law. The reason why games developers and publishers sue cheat makers and threaten to take them to court is because of the argument that reverse engineering a game to produce cheats violates the developer's copyright. But what happened here is Well, it's amazing that it even got to court in the first place, but the way it got to court was very unusual. You see, I said historically, cheat makers don't have the money to fight a case in court, and so they just cease and desist. But making cheats for games is turning into a quite profitable business these days. In fact, there are some cheats you can buy for certain games that actually require an ongoing subscription for the cheat. So not only is there money in it, but in this case, the cheat maker countersued Bungie, alleging that Bungie violated, if you can believe this, because it's absolutely true, alleging that Bungie violated its copyright by accessing one of its employees' computers. Bungie then successfully argued that they were perfectly entitled to spy on somebody's computer without their knowledge because this was part of their anti-cheat procedures and it was all covered in their end-user license agreement. And a jury agreed that this was perfectly fine. So while on the one hand, I'm sure Bungie doesn't really care about the $63,210 in damages they were awarded, it's almost certainly been a much, much stiffer blow for the developers of the cheat for Destiny 2. And it is, it's difficult to shed a tear for a cheat maker, especially a cheat maker who's earning enough money from selling the cheat that they're able to afford legal representation against the game developer and publisher. But what's worrying is the legal precedent that's been set, which of course is exactly why Bungie took them to court. They wanted a legal precedent, and that legal precedent is that it's perfectly fine for a games developer or publisher to access and spy upon the contents of your computer without your knowledge, although technically with your permission, because it's in the end-user license agreement, that thing that nobody ever reads. They just scroll to the end and click accept so they can get on with playing the game. But the precedent has now been set. A jury has agreed that it is perfectly fine for a games developer or publisher to access the contents of your PC without your knowledge. And let's face it, even though you might have agreed to the end-user license agreement, until somebody successfully argues otherwise, without your permission. Next up, does anybody out there own an Asus gaming PC or laptop? Or, well, it doesn't have to be a gaming PC, any kind of tech from Asus. If the answer is yes, you might want to reconsider where you're going to be buying your next upgrade from, because it almost certainly shouldn't be Asus. So a couple of weeks back, I saw a video from Gamers Nexus about an absolutely atrocious return experience that they had with an Asus laptop. They do this every now and then just to check out what the big manufacturers are up to. They'll pick something that has a fault and they'll send it back. They don't announce who they are. They do it sort of incognito just to see what the response will be like. And the response was absolutely horrific. This all happened as a result of Gamers Nexus receiving hundreds of emails from people complaining about the terrible state of Asus's returns procedure. So Gamers Nexus decided to put this whole thing to the test themselves, and they had an Asus Republic of Gamers Ally device. And it had developed a problem with a thumbstick, which they detailed in the RMA that they sent back. But there was also a broken SD card slot, which apparently is a fairly common problem with this device, but they did not mention that. They wanted to see whether or not Asus would find that problem. Before they sent everything back, they took the whole device apart and they photographed and documented everything, then put it back together, packaged it up as per Asus's RMA guidelines, and sent it back to the return center. What happened next was depressingly predictable. Now, the whole thing was still under warranty, by the way. It's important that you remember that. But when the response came back from the repair center, not acknowledging the in-warranty problem it was sent in for, the broken thumbstick, stating that the device needed an almost $200 fix for customer-induced damage, which wasn't covered under the warranty. No mention of the broken thumbstick that it was sent back in for. No mention of the broken SD card slot, which wasn't mentioned on the RMA, but which you would have expected them to find and repair. No, they wanted to charge Gamers Nexus, without realizing it was Gamers Nexus they were talking to, nearly $200 to completely replace the LCD screen, which worked fine. It wasn't broken when they sent it in because of customer-induced damage, which wasn't covered by the warranty. exactly what customer-induced damage were they talking about, because there was no damage that would cause a problem to any of the components that weren't already broken. And it turned out that there was a tiny little ding in the plastic case that had been caused when Gamers Nexus opened the case up to take the SSD out and document the internals by taking photographs so they could compare before and afterwards. And Asus were claiming that this was going to cost nearly $200 to fix. And the response time that they gave Gamers Nexus to agree to what basically amounts to extortion was so tiny, putting so much pressure on them to agree to pay for, and remember, they still hadn't addressed the broken thumbstick or the broken SD card slot. Instead, this was to replace an LCD screen that wasn't broken when they sent it back. And if they didn't agree to pay for it, Asus threatened to send the whole thing back in pieces if necessary. They said that if you weren't going to pay for this, then they would simply down tools and send the whole thing back in whatever condition it was after they'd taken apart to find out what was wrong with it, even though they hadn't found out what was wrong with it and they were making up shit that was wrong with it. Obviously, Gamers Nexus refused to buckle under pressure, and they sent back an outraged response saying, "What do you mean replace the LCD screen? It was fine when I sent it in. You broke my screen and now you want me to pay for it." There was a bit of back and forth going on between the two, but they basically refused to buckle under the pressure. They eventually got the device back, and everything except for the LCD screen, which it turned out wasn't broken after all, was repaired under warranty and they didn't have to pay for it. But the problem is, this is not an isolated incident. Gamers Nexus did this whole RMA test with Asus as a result of hundreds of emails that they had from their subscribers complaining about the extortionate practices that Asus routinely did as part of its whole RMA process, denying that anything was covered by the warranty and then insisting that people pay an exorbitant amount of money in order to fix things that were not covered under the RMA in the first place, and threatening to send the stuff back in pieces if the person who sent the RMA in refused to agree to pay out of their own pocket for something that was supposed to be covered by the warranty that Asus sold them. Remember, these are not isolated incidents. A while back, Tom's Hardware reported somebody in Canada who sent back an RTX 4090 that needed its 16-pin power connector replaced. Technically, the card still worked. It was just that the clip on the power connector pin was chipped, which could have led to issues down the road. So he returned it to Asus. It wasn't under warranty still. He'd had it long enough that the warranty had expired. So he was prepared to pay for the repair. And when the repair came back, or when the bill for the repair came back, he'd only paid, well, I'll say only, it's an expensive card. He'd paid $2,000 for the card in the first place. I'm assuming that's Canadian dollars. Asus wanted to charge him $2,750 to replace the 16-pin connector. So, you can kind of see a sort of pattern emerging here. And when the Gamers Nexus video came out, Asus were reasonably quick to respond, but there was no apology. In a amazingly tone-deaf statement, Asus simply said that you're just confused. It's your fault. It's not us. You're just confused. They said they would no longer offer to fix cosmetic. We're talking about the tiny little scratch in the casing. This is what apparently everybody was just getting confused about. They said they were no longer going to offer to fix cosmetic repairs, or cosmetic damage rather, that didn't affect the functionality of the device, because apparently this was just confusing people. No, Asus. What's confusing people is you charging nearly $200 for an LCD screen that wasn't broken while failing to address the two things that were broken, which necessitated the device being sent back in the first place. That's what's confusing. It's as if Asus were looking at the way Apple conducts its returns and repairs procedures, like when your screen stops working because the screen connector has just come loose, and instead of just plugging the thing back in, they'll charge you $1,200 to replace the entire screen. And Asus were looking at the way Apple does this and said, hold my beer. What is the world coming to when a PC manufacturer has a returns procedure that makes Apple look good? Well, after Asus's initial response, the whole "you're all just confused" thing, for some strange reason, didn't have the calming effect on their customer base that Asus seemed to have been expecting. They have more recently issued another response, committing to do better in the future. In particular, let me find the exact point in the message. They're going to, here it is, improve their quotation accuracy effective immediately. So we're talking about the prices that they quote for the repairs that they're going to undertake. Like, for example, charging $2,750 to fix a 16-pin power connector on a device that only cost $2,000 in the first place. The sort of thing that Apple routinely gets away with. And Apple can routinely get away with this because, well, they've got an effective monopoly. If there's something wrong with your Mac or your iPad, where else are you going to go? Nobody else is allowed to repair them. For we members of the glorious PC gaming master race, however, well, we do actually have options. And one of those options is never buy anything from Asus ever again. It is your money. Vote with your wallet. Spend it wisely. Well, that just about covers everything that I had to say for this week. I do have this nagging suspicion that there was something I was supposed to talk about, but whatever it was, it's completely gone. I do this all the time, by the way. A couple of years back, because when I'm out and about and pottering around the house, I'll think, oh, that'd be a good thing to talk about in Mingles with Jingles, and then by the time I get back to the computer, I've completely forgotten about it. Or by the time I sit down to record Mingles with Jingles, I've completely forgotten about it. So I started keeping a text file on the desktop, and it's just called mingles.txt. And anytime I think of something while I'm sitting at the computer, I open up the text file and I write it down as a reminder to talk about it in Mingles with Jingles. But then I would either forget to put it in the text file, or I would put it in the text file, and then when it came to the episode of Mingles with Jingles, I would forget to read the text file. So, seriously, kids, getting old really sucks. I mean, I've always been kind of crap, but it's definitely getting worse as I get older. Did I ever tell you about that one time when I wasn't old? I think I must have been in my mid-30s, or very early 30s, and I had gone to the post office. I can't remember what it was. This was back in the days when people actually, sent real post rather than email or SMSs. And I went to the post office to post something. And before I went into the post office, there was a newsagent's over the road from it. And I went in and I bought a copy of that month's PC Zone magazine, which is immediately dating this particular story, if you can remember PC Zone. And I'm sort of absent-mindedly flicking through the pages of this PC Zone magazine as I go into the post office and get an envelope and a stamp, put the address on the letter that I was going to post, and then wandered out of the post office to the post boxes outside and posted the PC Zone magazine into the letterbox, and was halfway down the street with a letter still in my hand before I realised what it was that I'd just done. And I couldn't have been older than 32 or 33 at the time. And let's just say things have not been getting better the older I get. But I'm sure you wouldn't have me any other way. Although I certainly would. What can I say? I've made a career out of being crap. I'm certainly good at it. Anyway, that is it. If there was something else I'm supposed to be talking about, it got no chance. I've even opened up the text document on the desktop and it's completely blank. There's nothing in it. So whatever it was that I wanted to mention, let me see. I did the cancer survivors charity thing. Yep, I got the Manscaped ad in. No, it's gone. Whatever it was. Maybe next week, if I remember. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Crap though it may have been. I hope you all had a great weekend, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.